YouTube! I have something to tell you that I am extremely ashamed of, and the fact that it's reached this point is kind of a testament to how embarrassing this is. I've been enjoying the game. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I've actually been having a good time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! What's worse than that is that some of this has actually been in the format that includes Max C. Now, before you click off this video, I promise you that there is some kind of an element of truth to this matter. For realsies, let me show you some crazy replays that I had over the course of this weekend, playing a little bit for fun, actually for fun, off stream no less. But you should still follow it at twitch.tv/Farfa. Alright, so one of the reasons I love Unchained is that if you just draw like a 2-3 card combo hand, plus like one defensive card, you're in a really good position, even against something like Snake Eyes, because the amount of engine push that you have with this deck when you draw things like Aruha, Sharvara, Traps, and Spells, and just one single Talents or any kind of like big blowout hand draw like a Max C, or, you know, Thrust for going second, is usually really good in this deck. Let's see how this one plays out. We skip to the end of this turn here. So we got the semi-standard setup here of the Princess in the graveyard, the Ambler Whale, Destruction, the Masquerena as well. We're going to lead with our Sharvara plus Trap card here, but also our opponent has Max C. So this is where things get a little bit annoying for this deck, because it's kind of hard to, well, it's kind of semi-easy for this deck to play through a decent amount of disruption. Max C, however, is one of the cards that's pretty terrible. They are, in fact, going to immediately use Masquerena here, and throwing their entire field into the Apollousa, which is generally how this deck like can beat Unchained. So I don't blame them for doing that, because even though, like, with hindsight, you can see that we have talents here. I think at the time this wasn't like a super popular card, but it's obviously something you should be mindful of. The thing is, if you establish an Apollousa against Unchained, it's very difficult for Unchained to actually play through a lot of that. You kind of have to go for an early Abomination, but here, it's a pretty damn good deal for us, as we go for the talents to steal that Apollousa to turn off future hand traps, which, to be fair, is not the end of the game for them, because, you know, they still have Max C. There's multiple hand traps that they can use still to prevent us from actually OTKing. They still have like a big field as well. There's like a decent amount of monster seal to still fight through. So we're going to keep using all of our Unchained effects to float and special summon a bunch from our deck here. And just set up a way to finish the game here by removing the field spell, dropping the attack of his monsters quite low. And then this is one of the cool nifty things that you can do with Unchained. Rakea in the battle phase, that's actually a way that you usually play around Nibiru, for example, is by using the effect in the battle phase to go for the Abominable, to then destroy a card, revive, and then attack directly for a game here. And the Apollousa that we stole is going to be able to put in the work here to prevent the Ambler Whale from triggering off of this Princess. We attack for 3,000, and the final blow comes from Shayama. A combo hand with extenders and just one defensive card, and Unchained is able to not just break a field, but OTK through it. Well, the one replay that I have to show you where I do actually get to go first, my opponent has drawn a Max C here as well, 2 hand traps. You see that the Veiler, for example, here doesn't actually do that much, which is why this deck is obviously really fun. They Veiler my Tour Guide, which, I mean, you kind of have to, right? Like, you kind of, you know, have to negate Tour Guide, I'd say. They have a Max C as well. So we are going to, in fact, chain the Sharvara here to special summon. And that's just going to be able to give us some kind of setup here as we pass on just an escape. There it is! The most broken card in Yu-Gi-Oh! Fenrir! But I figured that this is decent because this is follow-up plus a pop under Max C when they're only on 3 cards. They have Call by the Grave, which is unfortunate, but I think we got a decent amount of follow-up in our hand here. We have an extender plus the good normal summon of Sarama. They have Taya, but they don't have any worms in the graveyard here. Just a singular back row. It's funny because against Sword Soul, you know, Blackout, you'd think like that kind of ends a lot of decks' turns, but not really for Unchained. However, it is instead going to be Infinite Impermanence. I wonder what we do here. We can probably keep playing actually with this Aruha, yeah. So we're going to activate the Aruha in the hand, destroying the Sarama, floating the Sarama to special summon Shayama. Shayama pop the Aruha. And you just slice through hand traps and disruptions in Unchained so well and so easily. It's really fun. Is there a reason I didn't keep going here? Maybe with like a Yama or something like that? I guess there's maybe some other lines I could have went through. I guess like I could have summon the Yama, set a card, and then search Sharvara, and then keep playing like that, but I think it might have been the same outcome. But in a simplified game state, King Caesar is probably more than enough just by itself here. We got Trap card plus Aruha here. This is more than enough to seal out the end of the game here. Regardless of what this back row is, there should be a decent amount of gas. So yeah, just a demonstration of how Unchained can also just slice through a bunch of hand traps, as well as maybe dealing with Maxi to an extent, as well as allowing you to still maintain a decent amount of follow-up for your next turn, despite the disruptions. And yeah, for here, we're just going through the motions, doing a, I mean, remember, we started this turn with like 2 cards, by the way, and we're just generating so much advantage here, getting our trap card follow-up for next turn. We got the battle phase. More than 8,000 damage with the Reikea, should that be anything, and that one seals out the duel here. And as you can see, we have opened no defensive cards. Well, hand traps anyway. We do have Thrust, and that's one of the fun, awesome things about Unchained that I've been really enjoying about this deck, is that it has so much gas and so much ability to push and play through things, that even if you don't draw any hand traps, and if you just see like a single defensive card, you can crack full entire fields. Let's skip to the end of this branded turn here and see exactly what I'm talking about. Not the most standard of branded turns, but regardless, we have the Omni Negate Trap card, a Live Regained, and some Thunder Dragon cards as well. Pretty based, if I'm honest. Let's see exactly how we can crack this going second. Well, we set that Retribution, we draw for turn, and we don't see another extender. In fact, it's a blank. So we've got the 2-card combo here of Sharvara plus a card to destroy here, floating up into the Aruha. And the really great thing is that a lot of disruption in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is destruction, which is where this deck really thrives. And why, one of the reasons that I've been really enjoying this as well, is that there's a lot of graveyard activated effects here. So there's a whole bunch of floodgates and stuff that this deck kind of just doesn't really care about. Colossus being one of them, with the fact that, unfortunately, we do have a bunch of search cards in our hand, but you just have so much that you can actually do here without that. Non-targeting effect of Shiyama here actually gets him on his Retribution, which is pretty important here. And this Titan is really just not doing anything viable here, because destroying cards against Unchained doesn't actually really do that much. So we'll see exactly where he tries to disrupt me here. We still got that Titan live. The Colossus is obviously preventing us from using 3 of the cards in our hand here, so we are kind of just playing with a 2-3 card combo right now. Yeah, so far it's been going okay. We are resolving the effect to get the Matrix here, which means that he is going to be able to destroy one of our cards soon, which he does eventually on the Anguish here, kind of forcing it out. Using the effect of Matrix, and that means we can use our Quick Effect Reikea to chain, preventing the Titan from being able to respond. Now, the way that Titan works is kind of like how Paleozoics work, in that you actually have to respond directly to the thing being activated here. So we link off our opponent's monster, the Colossus, just because we actually do probably want to start using some search cards now. So we get rid of the Colossus, which is generally quite hard to out because of the destruction protection. You can't run over it in the battle phase. So being able to link it away is obviously really strong here. We've got more destruction effects as well, with the Deus Machine X here being able to cycle back and pop a card. The Dark Contract on the field is just really there as like a free destruction effect. No, we're actually going to use that for the Yama in the graveyard, triggering off the Sarama and the Reikea to summon more cards out of our deck here. The Abominable is not going to be activated here. We're going to use it as a body because we're going to go Thrust for talents. And this is probably the best way that this deck can actually OTK with some of those defensive cards like Thrust and Talents, is either by forcing things out or just stealing your opponent's entire field here, which we did pretty well here. Well, I showed you what this deck can do going second against various forms of meta and combo. What is Unchained's answer to Floodgates? 2 of them of which, Barrier Statue and the Clockwork Knight here. So, again, this is one of the reasons that I really like this deck. And you got Dimension Shifter as well. So quite a lot to fight through, as you can see. One of the reasons I really like this deck, as I was saying, is because Unchained doesn't really lose to like any specific card that much. There's still a decent amount of ways for you to push through things and keep playing through various stuff. As you can see here, especially against Stun, we still have a decent amount of plays available to us, but because of the Shifter, I think we maybe try and take this slow here. Actually gonna go and take control of the monster. I think we're doing a Tribute Summon of Sharvara. Absolutely unhinged here. Popping the Trap card, special summoning the Aruha, getting the Shiyama. The Shiyama pop the Aruha to hit the Clockwork Knight, and that is going to float up into the Abominable. 4, 5, 7, and then I think the Requiem is the final card to be able to OTK through the Stun player's field here. Oh wait, are we not going for game here? Well, I think I'm trying to play it safe because of... oh, no, I think I prosperity'd, actually. That's why I'm not going for game. But yeah, one of the nice things about the... yeah, okay, we are under prosperity. That's why I didn't go for game. One of the cool things about Unchained... Cool, you know, it is Shifter, but it is what it is. Shifter, like, hurts the deck, but your Unchained monsters still trigger when destroyed. They don't have to be destroyed and go to the graveyard. Which is a pretty important thing here. They top deck Change of Heart, and they, I guess, are just trading to clear here because they can't really do much else. Jaugen and... Oh, he didn't use the effect to destroy my last card. That would have put me in a very weird predicament, honestly. Is this game exactly? No, okay. Alright, stun players are stun players, you know what I'm saying? That might have been a bit awkward, actually, if you use that. Does Jaugen discard any card, or is it just monster? Discard a random card from your hand. Okay, well, not quite enough here as we managed to take this one down. So as you can see, playing through 3 different disruptions and floodgates and still being able to wrap this one up here. So if you want to see the deck list, this is what I've been running here. A nice 41, mwah, beautiful. Mostly because I just feel like the second talent's going to come up, surely, right? Yeah, there's no real logic for 41. I think this is one of the decks that you do want to keep as low of a count as possible. Unlike the TCG, where you have 3 copies of Prosperity to really boost your consistency, you kind of suffer a little bit from that in Master Duel. This deck can sometimes be a little bit bricky. There's a few cards that you just don't want to draw. They're fine to draw, but you'd ideally not see. Fiendish Rhino Warrior, Shayama, Requiem, and I feel like there's one more potentially in here. I think Abominable Soul as well. And even Rakea is like not ideal. So it's kind of like one of the downsides, you know, there's always like, you know, concessions you make when picking a deck. And one of the worst things about Unchained, I mean, it would be a perfect deck otherwise, perfectly designed at least, is that you do have a decent amount of cards that you'd really rather not draw. Most of the cards that I mentioned are actually fine to draw in a normal sort of test hand setting. You can kind of get away with basically any of them being drawn. It's just you'd rather not. You know, if you draw a Tour Guide and a Fiendish Rhino Warrior, you're basically playing with 1 less card in your hand. If you draw Shayama, you're again basically 1 less card in your hand. You can get the Shayama out your hand with the monster effects, but you'd just rather it be in the deck because then that's an extra card. So it's a weird paradox where you want to stay like close to 40, I feel, because you need that consistency when you're lacking the prosperity, because you can just draw hands that like don't play. But you also kind of would sort of want to maybe go over 40 to minimize the chances of drawing those one-offs. For the most part, the card choices are fairly standard, I'd say. The flex spots here are obviously going to be like the talents and thrust. I've opted to play Called By and Crossout and Ash at max copies just to maximize the number of max C outs I have. And on top of that, I think that Talents is a really, really good card this format. Because again, Snake Eye, they just have lots of different monster effects that can activate. And as you saw, talent stealing something like an Apollousa or even a Resolved Princess can really help you go through the OTKs. And that's where this deck really thrives, is you're kind of never going to outgrind Snake Eye. You do have to try and go for the kill. But, you know, I've seen a world where people sometimes play things like Droplet. You know, there's a lot of cards in your hand that are just hard once per turns, like a Ruha, Sharvara. So sometimes sending those is okay for the Droplet, and even sending things that have that are actively resolving on the field, like a Call By, a Crossout. The Rota, for example, you can kind of send those Droplet off of Tour Guide sometimes. The dodge effect the negation is a decent little trick you can do as well. So Droplet might be a consideration, or potentially just more hand traps. You could just play Imperms or something instead if you feel like it. It just doesn't feel high impact enough, but it gives you another thrust target, which is okay. But thrust targets for me, I feel like are okay, because getting the traps for thrust, if you don't need talents, is actually kind of decent sometimes, because you could just use them as extenders for the Shavara or Ruha in your hand. As for the extra deck, I feel like this is fairly standard. Apollousa sometimes not that popular, but I think it's pretty decent because it just gives you... there's a couple of like 3-card combos that use Apollousa without your normal summon, so that's pretty decent. Yama, some people think it's a 3-of. I'm very cheap and I don't want to craft the 3rd ultra rare, so I'd rather not craft the 3rd ultra rare. And it hasn't come up for me yet, so well, you know, I can't really be too upset about that. Other than that, I haven't updated this with SP yet, it looks like, but you can probably throw an SP in here. You might be thinking Unicorn is the card to take out for SP, but I wouldn't really say so, because the Unicorn is a Fiend, which sometimes you get into situations where you're Fiend locked with Muckraker, and it's actually kind of important to have a Fiend specifically. So that's why I'm not playing SP over it, but I mean, like, you could probably cut something like, maybe like the Darius, honestly. Going for a Zeus never really comes up. For me personally, that's really the most of the reason why I'm playing the Darius, I think, is really just for Zeus, but, you know, you don't really need it, unless you're trying to go for, like, a rank up into Machine X or something, which I feel like hasn't come up for me. I could be playing the deck completely wrong, but this has just been my minimal experience with the deck. Alright, I know it's not usually my regular style of video. We didn't make enough fart jokes, which is understandable from my channel. But like I said, sometimes I do kind of really enjoy the game. And Unchained has been a deck that I've really enjoyed the game with. I'll leave a link in the description as well to a spreadsheet for some of the details of some of the combos that you can do in Unchained. And this is created by Team Raid and Trade, so shoutouts to them who've managed to compile this spreadsheet. Unchained is a deck that's I feel quite... It's not that hard to get into, but to really maximize and get full use out of all of your destruction effects and play through disruption, it's actually quite a high skill ceiling deck. So a lot of practice is required to really get the best of this. I still feel I'm nowhere near at a point where I can call myself like particularly good or competent with it. So still lots to learn. And yeah, it's a really fantastic deck, especially for those of you who are interested in something that's a little bit more technical. All right, that's enough yapping. Thank you everyone for watching today. Hope you enjoyed this little segment, and until next time, adios.